Hello again, Bat fans! In this episode we will check out the first appearance of yet another strange enemy called the Corrosive Man, in the storyline called Night People. It's nighttime in Gotham and Batman is out there on patrol, and it's a good thing because a very dangerous criminal called Derek Mitchell has escaped from the Gotham Penitentiary. While Batman stops the regular criminals, a brutal murder takes place in Cardboard City, the corner of Gotham where all the homeless gather at night. The police are informed about Derek Mitchell, who was sentenced to 3 life terms for murder, and in the meantime the wanted man walks across the city on a rainy night, looking to get revenge on a man called Cadaver. Mitchell is about to reach his target, but a couple of cops spot him on the streets and chase the man to the docks. What none of them knows is that Batman is also at the docks, looking to capture the leader of a drug smuggling gang. Batman goes into action and attacks the incoming drug shipment. The thunder and rain work for him, as the criminals are all scared and terrified of the dark night. While Batman beats the crooks, Derek Mitchell decides to hide near the hazardous waste area of the docks. The leader of the smuggling gang drops the shipment on Batman and jumps out of the boat to escape. The thunderstorm continues and lightning strikes at the docks, creating a massive explosion at the hazardous waste area. The explosion reaches the fugitive and fire spreads across the docks. Batman couldn't stop the leader of the criminal gang, but he takes the drugs and gives it to the police on the docks, who are waiting for the firefighters to get there. When they arrive, they try to put out the fire, but from the remains of the hazardous waste, someone comes out. Someone who was human but now is something different. The firefighters try to help the man, but as soon as they touch him, they start to burn and disintegrate. Confused, the Corrosive Man walks out and startles the police, who shoot at him. However, bullets cannot stop him and he attacks back, burning their skin and their weapons. Batman notices the shooting and he returns to the docks to confront the Corrosive Man. Using the fire hose, Batman pushes the Corrosive Man inside a shed where he tries to stop the man with some chains, but fails as the Corrosive Man manages to break free. While Batman is down, the Corrosive Man leaves the place and continues his quest to locate the man he calls Cadaver. In the meantime, Cadaver awaits the return of his servant, the man responsible for killing one of the homeless in Cardboard City. Cadaver is a strange man, fascinated with death, torture and pain, but he is disappointed when he learns that his servant has killed the wrong man. And so Cadaver sends the fool back to Cardboard City to finish his mission. Reluctantly, the man returns and distracts the people of Cardboard City, and this time, he kills the right person. Batman just recovered from his encounter with the Corrosive Man, and he was following his trail when he noticed the disturbance in Cardboard City. Batman goes down and stops the criminal before he could leave the crime scene. The Fat Man reveals that he was following Cadaver's orders, and Batman realizes that Cadaver is the same man that the Corrosive Man is after. Elsewhere, the Corrosive Man has learned the location of Cadaver, and he intends to repay the man for what he did to him. At that moment, Cadaver is talking to the man who hired him to kill the homeless. The victim was in fact a millionaire in disguise, and the man who hired Cadaver to kill him was his only relative, who seeks the fortune from the inheritance. But now, Cadaver wants some of that money as well, and he threatens the man by strapping him to a chair and balancing him over quicklime. At that moment, the Fat Man returns to Cadaver, but he has brought Batman with him, as he had no other choice. Cadaver then activates a number of deadly traps to stop Batman, but the Dark Knight manages to avoid all of them and stops Cadaver's frontal attack with an axe using only his hands. Batman strikes back and Cadaver is left hanging by the neck of his victim above the quicklime. Batman has the situation under control, but the Corrosive Man drops from the ceiling, knocking Batman unconscious upon landing. The Corrosive Man has finally reached Cadaver, and he wants revenge against him. He used to work for Cadaver, but the man betrayed him, and that's how he ended in prison for life. Now he wants retribution and grabs Cadaver by the hand before pressing his hand to his face, burning him permanently. Batman recovers and tackles the Corrosive Man, who falls to the quicklime and the chemical reaction apparently kills him, ending the nightmare just before the sun rises. The police will soon take care of the situation, and Batman leaves the place in the Batmobile, but in the middle of the road he comes across an accident and learns that the leader of the drug gang that he couldn't stop was killed by a radio DJ who was high on drugs. Batman reflects on this poetic justice and everything comes to an end. That was another story that took place in Detective Comics, where Batman was mostly working alone. The whole story takes place in 3 issues. The first one, Detective 587, works as the introduction of all the characters and concepts that will be developed throughout the story. But it also works as an origin story for the Corrosive Man, and all these while Batman confronts the normal criminals of Gotham. What I'm trying to say is that the first part of this trilogy was a bit messy, as many things were happening at the same time. But after that, the second and third parts were outstanding. As it usually happens in this era of detective comics, Batman is once again mostly a Dark Knight, with very little detective work and no Bruce Wayne at all. And it's kinda logical, as the entire story happens in just one night. This creative team focused more on Batman than anything else, and it's quite effective. And this story also gives us 2 new enemies, who haven't appeared as much as they should have. The Corrosive Man is a special case. His origin story is the typical cliché for supervillains, and he reminds me a lot of Dr. Phosphorus, one of the enemies in Batman's Strange Apparitions. If you remember that story, Dr. Phosphorus was created as a result of an accident caused by a nuclear explosion, giving Phosphorus radioactive powers to burn everything that he touches, and his body also glows with radioactivity, exposing his skeleton to the naked eye. That's almost exactly what happens to Derek Mitchell, but the difference is that while Phosphorus starts his revenge against Gotham City, the Corrosive Man only wants revenge against Cadaver. In fact, the Corrosive Man is a tragic character, and you feel his pain after the transformation that ruined his life. This is a person who made terrible decisions and ended up in tragedy, whereas Phosphorus was just evil to begin with. Before becoming the Corrosive Man, Derek Mitchell worked for Cadaver, killing people on his behalf, and because Cadaver betrayed him, Mitchell ended up in prison. So the most evil guy of the story is actually Cadaver. He's yet another strange and bizarre enemy, although not as much as the Ratcatcher or the Ventriloquist, but still very strange. Cadaver has a fascination with the dramatics, pain and death. He pretends to be a vampire by resting inside a coffin. His entire place is filled with deadly traps, medieval weapons and torture devices. He wears makeup pretending to be an undead or the devil, and all these while he runs his criminal activities as a killer for hire. A very strange character indeed. But the villains were not the only new thing about this story. Grant and Wagner also introduced Cardboard City, the place where the homeless of Gotham live, and I appreciate this approach. You just don't see these in modern comics, where it's always about the high buildings, powerful vehicles and sometimes monsters in the sewers, but the actual people living on the streets of Gotham, not very much. Of course, this kind of social commentary was not entirely new. Back in the 70s, Len Wein introduced a group of Irish homeless, but once he stopped writing Batman, they disappeared. So it was very interesting to see a similar concept back in the 80s. Now, as always, we have to mention the things that are not so great about this story. For example, the Corrosive Man could burn through everything with his body. When he tries to drive a truck, he melts the seat, the wheel, and the entire vehicle. He even burned through the floors. So if his burning was so powerful, why didn't he burn through the ground as well? Seems like a convenient oversight from the writers. There is also the final fight, where Batman tackles the Corrosive Man, causing him to fall to the quicklime and apparently die. Are they suggesting that because this enemy seemed unstoppable, Batman killed him by accident? What I think is that they couldn't find a way to stop the Corrosive Man, and they came up with the easiest possible solution, making Batman look a bit out of character. There is also the fact that throughout the entire story, there's this radio DJ playing songs that reflect what's happening in the story, and he also keeps the audience updated about the events of the story. It becomes very annoying, especially since the songs are from the 80s or earlier and are now mostly outdated, and in general he is obnoxious. The only good thing about this DJ is how in the end, he is the person who eliminates the drug dealer that Batman couldn't stop. So even if he was annoying, the payoff in the end makes it all worth it. And the last complaint I could find is the fact that in the middle of the last issue, there was a bonus story. This was part of DC's efforts to showcase new talent, and several bonus books appeared on different comics. In Detective 589, the bonus book features Poison Ivy, in a story in which her evil plan backfires and she ends up poisoned alongside Batman. The whole story is not very good or interesting, and most of the people involved never became prominent comic creators. So much for the bonus book. But other than that, this story is great. In fact, I believe what makes this story excellent is the art by Norm Breyfogle. This is the point where Norm finally gets his own distinct style for Batman, and you can see it in the covers and in the striking panels of The Dark Knight. And also look at the panel layout on the final battle. There are no actual panels and the story develops mainly through the art, which I think is magnificent. But the most important thing about Norm's art in this story is the introduction of the new design for the Batmobile. For too long, Batman was driving cars that were too simple. Ever since the Silver Age ended, creators abandoned the idea of the very complex Batmobile designs, and the car was just plain and simple. But now Norm presents us for the first time in forever a new Batmobile, very aerodynamic and looking like a great machine for speed and stealth. Personally, I love this design, and it shows how Norm truly got the hang of Batman. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a like. Now the next episode is going to be a special one, as we check out various comics to understand a bit better who is Batman and who is Bruce Wayne. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe now and come back for the next episode. Until then, Godspeed, my friends.